Hello, everybody. This is Bob Brooks, host of the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thanks so much for joining me today. I appreciate you listening to the podcast. I want to go over a little bit what we talked about today on the program. There's a Susie Orman, who's arguably the number one or number two financial guru in media today, whoever determines that. But she, I'm sure, battles that top spot out with Dave Ramsey, is warning of that a $2 million nest egg is chump change based on the problem of longevity. Man, is this article just full of good pop culture finance that I want to take and show you the other side of the story so you can compare to what you and start to realize and figure out what you believe in. And also talk a little bit about where these articles tell you where you should be for retirement. And if you're not there, don't panic because it's not what you think. So if you got a question for me, please go to the website at www.prudentmoney.com and send it in. Also, if you want to go through the retirement planning process and kind of see where you're at, the process that I use is a two-page process. It does not take hardly any time, and it gives you a really good initial baseline as to where you are. So just go to the website, info@prudentmoney.com, send a request in. We'll get you taken care of. Won't take more than about 30, 40 minutes. And there's always no cost to doing that. So you can take advantage of that all at prudentmoney.com. Enjoy the program. Well, could $2 million not be enough for retirement? Today we're going to take a look. Stay tuned for Prudent Money. Good afternoon and welcome to the Prudent Money Radio Show. I'm your host, Bob Brooks. Thank you so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. Well, if you got a question for me, please go to the website at prudentmoney.com. You can go to the top of the page, just click through, and you will see exactly what to do. Send in, fill out the email form and send it in, and I will answer it. I think that people sometimes think I'm not going to answer, that I don't answer these questions, and they are surprised when I do. But I really do answer all the questions as part of the ministry efforts of what we do at prudentmoney.com. And we definitely want to be a resource for you in a time where there are very few resources left. And so that's all at the website, www.prudentmoney.com. One of my main concerns about people today is the ability to interpret what they read. And I'll give you a great example of this a little bit later. But it's just like the Roth IRA is a great example of this. And you've got a lot of financial advisors pitching Roth IRAs. And the whole premise behind a Roth IRA is that you save, that you don't pay income tax on what you take out of it. Well, that's true, but there's so much more other things that you want to consider. I mean, in fact, I even draw a line in the sand on age as to whether it makes sense or not. But we're going to talk about that. Before we get to that, though, let's talk a little bit about the new $1 million retirement fund. We've talked about this many times, and the reason I'm bringing this up and I'm going over this today, not $1 million portfolio for retirement is needed. Susie Orman warns that a $2 million nest egg is chump change. And so we'll, I think these are good exercises, not saying that Miss Orman is wrong by any stretch, just saying here's the other side of the story. And why don't you consider both sides before you read something like this and make a decision. So let's talk a little bit about this. Susie Orman warned, and if you don't know who Susie Orman is, she's probably one of the top financial gurus in the country with all the books that she's written and the TV shows that she does. I don't know who's number one, if it's either her or Dave Ramsey, but I'm assuming that they kind of fight it out for 1 and 2. But she does come out with what I call the extremes of pop culture finance. Now, there's not a Susie Orman article that goes by that I don't like to talk about, just because there is always so much room for another side of the story. And this one is about being $2 million may not even be enough. Now, when you hear that, I'm sure for some people it's somewhat of a trigger, and they're thinking, oh, I don't even have $200,000 in savings, and now they say I need $2 million, and that may not even be enough. And so I think that people in the media, especially on the financial side, need to be careful about what they say and how they phrase it, because that's, for a lot of people, just like Roth IRAs are great because you can get income tax free distributions. They don't really care about they don't really care about the rest of it. They just heard I get IRS tax free distributions. They want to know how that works. And there's plenty of financial advisors who will sell you something like that. So let's go through this article. With 4.1 million Americans reaching the retirement age in 2024 alone, very few will find themselves financially prepared to retire by one financial expert's count, and this would be Susie Orman. In 2024, Susie Orman wrote that even big retirement savers are at risk because of rising longevity. She says, plan for your money to last until at least age 95 or even 100 if you have a family history of longevity. This means that your money may have to last for 35 years after you retire, making even $2 million look like chump change. I love how she says this. Plan for your money to last until at least 95. If you lived between 85 to 95, you're beating the odds, because that's the average ages are a lot younger. And even 100, if you're at 100 or plus, obviously you're beating the odds. And that's if you have a family of history of longevity. I would say if you're anywhere 90 and above, you have a history of longevity. But even in that percentage, looking it up on artificial intelligence is fairly low, which we'll talk about. So she's saying that you're going to have to make your money work harder. A 2024 study from Northwestern Mutual, another really good source of pop culture finance, states that to retire comfortably, $1.46 million is what you would need to retire comfortably. We'll talk about this here in a second as well. I'm getting to it. And so the Americans' average retirement savings sit at just $88,000. Now, it would be useful if they'd put the ages that represents. Nowhere near enough for a comfortable retirement by Orman standard. And there is a perfectly worded sentence for you. Nowhere near enough for a comfortable retirement by Orman standard. What you need to be careful of is taking some writer, a media personality, whomever, and saying and trying to hit their standards. Your standards are the only standards that make sense. And if you retire, which this is a good retirement for a lot of people, $500,000 in assets and in Social Security, pension, or whatever, between you and your spouse both worked for a living in the entire time, you could probably you could net a fairly decent retirement out of that. It's not the end of the world. And then, are you behind on saving for retirement? And this is the catch-all formulas that we talk about that retirement planning is just not this easy. It does require it for you to use your brain versus what we've got down here. She says, Orman wrote that another solid retirement rule of thumb is to have 10 times your current income, say by the time you're 67 years old. 10 times being, so if you have $100,000 your current income, $1 million, which is the magic number seems to be, except for Northwestern Mutual says now it's $1.46 million. I guess that's inflation or something. is to have, let's see, following this, you should have 3 times your income saved by by age 40 and 6 times by age 50. Now, if you do the math and you say, well, yeah, that's where I am, you still may not retire when you want to on your standards. But that is an easy way to gauge whether you are able to retire or not. It says, if you think you are falling behind, you may want to seek expert guidance. RothIRA.org provides personalized expert advice for anyone with a portfolio of $100,000 or more. More ways to save during retirement. Susie Orman may not believe that a $2 million retirement portfolio is enough to see you through your golden years, but there are still many methods to grow savings that give retirees a comfortable cushion. So what's the difference between a comfortable cushion and a failing retirement? By her standards, that if the 2 million, the 1.8 you saved up, or the 2.1 million you saved up isn't going to do it, you can still have a comfortable cushion. No idea what that means. Let's see. It says, while Orman has faced significant backlash for her statements, with critics arguing that her figures are unattainable for most, the underlying principle she advocates is prudence. So, in fact, I'll give you a good example. I'm pretty sure that I heard this, and it was an article written by Dave Ramsey that advocated that you could use 10% per year as your growth rate and take that all the way to retirement. I wish it were that easy. Unfortunately, there's a lot of pitfalls that can happen along the way that can absolutely ruin and set you way back for retirement. Things you got to be careful about, things we talk about on the program. In a recent LinkedIn post, Susie Orman wrote, I encourage you to keep returning to this thought exercise. What are the financial steps you might take today to be kindest to your future old self, the 88-year-old, the 90-year-old, or the 95-year-old? For instance, she has always said you should try to pay off your home before you retire. Absolutely great advice. No discussion here. Whether that's in the cards for you or not, striking while the real estate market is hot is another option for retirement-minded investors who are also looking for some passive income now and throughout their golden years. So she's going from pay your house off, then rent it out, and but where are you going to live? And I would suggest most people in their retirement days are not real interested in being real estate developers. There's a percentage that do and do very well, but it is a lot of work, and it kind of makes you go, I thought I retired from all this stress. So just to keep in mind. Now, on the other side of the break, we're going to talk a little bit more and dive deeper into some of this advice and give you the other side of the story so that you can hear both sides. And this is what's very important to making up your mind and developing your own belief systems, is taking what you hear from both sides and pray about it and decide for yourself which one makes the most sense. Hey, this is Bob Brooks. I'm up against a break. Stick around, and I'll be right back. Welcome back. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thank you so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. If you got a question for me, please go to the website at www.prudentmoney.com. Once you get to the website, just go up to the top. You'll see it. Hit the link and send in a question, and I will get that question answered for you. That's all at the website, www.prudentmoney.com. I've often thought about and wondered, what is it about some of this pop culture finance that speaks in what I call absolutes. And when I say that, I mean, they'll say 1 + 2 is always equals to 3. So if you do this and this, you'll always get this. When it comes to money, it's not quite that simple, but it's harder to explain. And these 1 + 2 = 3 articles are really much easier to write than getting into the details and how you go about really planning for a good retirement. Because when it comes to money, sometimes 1 + 2 is 4. 1 + 2 might be 5. And I say it that way because it doesn't always add up. And a lot of times you have to really figure out what makes sense and what doesn't make sense based on the probabilities. Having said all that, I can sum it all up in this way, is there is so much more to retirement planning and planning out the rest of your life, even into longevity, that it can produce a type of retirement that you thought you never could have. And I talked a lot about that in the webinar the other day, is that so many people come to my office and they'll say, oh, they'll never retire. And very rarely did they walk out of the office thinking differently, or thinking the same way, thinking the same way. They could see how it's possible to retire. Maybe you don't have the ideal situation, but it is possible to put together a plan that's like 1 or 2 pages, not a big, thick booklet, and something that you can really monitor your retirement assets. So just something to think about. Now let's talk a little bit about some takeaways from all of this. Number 1, don't panic when you are supposed to be somewhere and you're told that you won't retire. So this rule of thumb that Ms. Orman mentioned was that at retirement you need to be at 10 times your current salary, and in investments is where you should be. Or you should be at age 40, I think it was 6 times your salary, and that kind of thing. And you may not be, you may not even be even close to it, but don't panic when that happens. Don't panic when you pick up an article. It kind of sucks you in that says, "Oh, you're way behind. You got problems." And the way that I would rephrase that sentence: don't panic when you are supposed to be somewhere you are not. When the person writing has never met you or talked about your situation on a one-to-one basis. Your situation with retirement is unique to you and nobody else. And so there's a lot that goes into that. Number 2, you have to start where you are today. And I think that's one of the biggest where you are is where you are. That is where you are today. That's what you have to start with. That what you've accumulated is what you've accumulated. You got to start with that. What you're saving is what you're saving. You can either save more, you might have to save less, because you're struggling to get in there what you're doing right now. But that's where you are. And there's nothing, the only thing that you can do with that is learn from that, whatever you feel that God's leading you to the next step. But you start right there where our financial advisor community is mentality of a lot of our financial advisor community is, we want you to start where we want you to. So in other words, you need to have at least $200,000 or $300,000 to even think about opening up an account. So it's important to understand you got to start where your unique situation is, and you got to build from there. If you have 10 times, is that enough? What kind of income are you looking at? Do you have safeguards in place? Are you going to ride the roller coaster? Because that's a dangerous way to attempt to retire. And I've seen it too many times in 32 years I've done this. So this is the problem with a lot of these pop culture articles, is that they leave out what some of the details so that you can make it relatable. And then longevity, which I don't disagree is a very important aspect of planning. If you've got parents, aunts, and uncles who've all lived to be 100 years old, there's a really good high probability chance that that's going to happen to you. I think what her chief argument is that you've got to plan as if you're going to live your 90s like you're going to live your 60s. And I would tell you that, at least it's been my experience, that that's not the case. and you cut back and you do things differently, but you still live a good retirement. Keep this in mind, only 2.25% of the population are over the age of 85. 14.85% are between the ages of 65 and 85. So if you're saving up all this capital, and if you make it to age 95 or above, you're in a very elite group of people who've done that. And keep that in mind as you determine what you want to do. The other thing is you may entertain a income-based strategy more so than a growth-based strategy. We always recommend income-based strategies if you're very, very, very conservative. But even if you're not, the income strategy might make sense because the income, even if you ran out of money, you still have your guaranteed incomes, which is what this would be. And then let's make sure we don't forget about the advice of opening up a Roth, because I think that this is such a marketed concept, and I think that it's giving out the wrong impressions. And I'll break it down very easy for you. The Roth IRA is designed, the beauty of the Roth IRA is designed for a long-term investor, 10, 15, 20, 25 years, to start saving money and accumulating money tax-free, just like an IRA. But the difference between an IRA and a Roth IRA is that when you get to, say, 65 and you start taking money out of the IRA, you're going to pay taxes on it. If you take money out of the Roth IRA, it comes out tax-free. So to get your IRA money and convert it to a Roth, to create a Roth, if that's what you're wanting to do, which is what they suggest to do. And there was part of this article that suggested to do that. I don't think I read that. But to convert that, you have to take, say you're going to put $100,000 from your current IRA you're going to convert it into a Roth IRA. Well, you're going to have to pay taxes on that money. So you're going to have to feel very comfortable with paying a chunk of taxes, which also, if that bumps your income up, let's say another $100,000, that will probably throw you in another tax bracket. So it's going to be an expensive move, potentially, to move that money from an IRA to a Roth, because you've got to pay the taxes on it somewhere. So they either get you up front or they get you at the end. In this particular situation, they get you at the upfront of the taxes, and you have to pay them. So if let's just say you have $100,000 and $30,000 of it is paid in taxes, and you have $70,000 left in the IRA. Well, you've got to get that $30,000 back just to break even. And then I would say that you've really got to build up a nice profit in that account to where you can start taking your profit out tax-free. And it just takes can take a long time to do that. So that's never made sense to me, to be at retirement and be told to take a Roth IRA out. I don't think it's wise advice. Hey, could be wrong, but it just doesn't make sense to me to do that. So keep that in mind. It's the taxes that hit you hard, and it's the taxes that you have to pay up front that are hard to overcome with such a limited time period. Now, if you were 50, 45, maybe even 55, I could justify a Roth conversion, but you have to keep those things in mind and make sure that you are taking advantage of a Roth for good reasons and for the right reasons. So what I wanted to finish off with, but we don't have enough time to do. I've only got a couple of minutes, and I'll pick back up on this tomorrow. Getting a lot of questions about the market. We haven't talked about that in probably a week or so because it's just kind of gone back and forth. But there's a lot to really cover about what's going on with the markets, why they look the way that they do, why they're not starting off so strong. And we'll cover that from beginning to end tomorrow and talk about some of the things that you should be considering as we start into 2025. Obviously, not to give you advice by any stretch, but just to let's go through a checklist and kind of check the boxes and make sure that you've covered your bases, because it could be that the market may be changing character, and we want to talk about what that means and why that's important for you to be considering steps that maybe you should take as we're entering into maybe an interesting part of the cycle. So we'll talk a little bit about that. If you have a question for me, go to my website, prudentmoney.com, and I'll get you taken care of. But today we are all out of time. Until we do meet again next time, keep the faith and have a great rest of the day.